Chapter 2, Seeing Through the False Self. The most essential and most often challenging step on the path to awakening is the simple act of becoming aware. Not just aware in the ordinary sense, but a deeply conscious of the patterns of thought, emotion, and behavior that arise from identification with the false self, i.e., the conditioned mind. The false self identity is not real, but a collection of memories, beliefs, and reactive patterns that consciousness mistakenly identifies with. This identification creates the illusion of separation, suffering, and the endless repetition of cause and effect. Until this is seen clearly, one remains trapped in the cycle of unconscious living, living out each story over and over in a loop of unconsciousness. Awareness is the light that reveals these patterns. As awareness deepens, the illusion of separate self begins to dissolve. One begins to see the thoughts, emotions, and behaviors that once seemed personal are simply conditioned responses to a rising consciousness. They are not you. This disidentification is not about fixing the mind, but rather seeing through the mind. The more one observes without judgment, the more the layers of the false self fall away. What remains is a silent, ever-present awareness, the true self, which is not a person, but pure consciousness itself. Most people live on a mental autopilot, reacting to life through the lens of past experiences, beliefs, and emotional imprints. The mind, like a program, processes each moment through its database of memory and conditioning, generating thoughts and emotions that feel real but are merely echoes of the past. This unconsciousness process creates a life of repetition, chasing pleasure, avoiding pain, and trying to manipulate the external world to soothe an internal discomfort. But the paradox is this: the more we try to fix the outer world to feel more whole, the more fragmented we become. The false self can never be satisfied because it is built on an illusion of lack. True healing begins when we stop trying to fix the illusion and instead rest in the awareness that sees it. When we are conscious of the false self and its mechanism, it loses its grip. The need to control, to protect, to be right, or to feel worthy begins to dissolve in the light of your full presence. When things go well, the false self feels inflated. When it's threatened, it collapses into fear, anger, or despair. But the true self, the awareness behind all experience, is untouched by any of it. It simply is. Freedom is not found in changing the story, but realizing you are not the story. You are the awareness which all stories arise and dissolve. The illusion of ego, expressions of the false self. From the perspective of non-duality, the ego is not a real entity. It is a mental construct, a bundle of thoughts, memories, and identifications that consciousness mistakenly believes to be me. Though it appears in many forms, all expressions of ego arise from the same illusion, the belief in separation. Here are 3 common expressions of this false identity. Number 1, the seeker of power, the self-centered ego. This aspect of ego is driven by the illusion of personal importance. It constantly seeks validation, status, and superiority. It believes fulfillment lies in acquiring more success, more admiration, more control. But no matter how much it gains, it remains restless because it is rooted in lack. Even when it appears to be confident or successful, this ego is haunted by the fear of not being enough. Its hunger is endless because it is trying to fill a void that actually does not exist. Only the belief in separation creates the sense of emptiness. True peace is never found in accumulation, only in the recognition of what you are is already whole. Number 2, the controller. ego of control and perfection. This ego believes safety and happiness come from controlling life. It tries to manage every outcome, every detail, every person. It clings to structure, predictability, and perfection, mistaking control for peace. But life is inherently fluid and uncontrollable. The more this ego resists uncertainty, the more tension and anxiety it creates. Eventually, the pressure of suppressed emotions and overthinking becomes too much, and the illusion collapses. In truth, the need to control arises from the fear of dissolving, the fear of that without control, I will disappear. But in non-dual awareness, this disappearance is liberation. You are not you are what you are does not need to control. It simply is. Number 3, the victim, ego of powerlessness. This ego identifies with suffering and helplessness. It believes life is happening to it and that the salvation lies outside in other people, in circumstances, in luck. It blames, it complains, and it waits to be rescued. This identity is energetically draining because it gives away all inner power. It forgets that the source of peace and clarity is not external, it is the awareness that sees in all experiences. The victim ego is not weak, it is simply unconscious. When awareness returns, the illusion of powerlessness dissolves, and what remains is the silent strength of being itself. All egoic identities, whether powerful, controlling, victimized, are sustained in identification. When we say, I am this, and we tie our worth to roles, achievements, or stories, we create suffering. For example, if someone identifies as a champion athlete, their sense of self arises and falls with the wins and losses. Joy becomes conditional. What begins as a natural expression of joy becomes a prison when the ego claims it. The moment identity attaches to it, the freedom is lost. The ego then works tirelessly to protect and maintain that identity, fearing anything that threatens it. The solution is not to fix the ego, but to see through it. All egoic patterns dissolve in the light of awareness, the light of the true self. When we stop identifying with thoughts, roles, emotions, we return to what we truly are, the formless, ever-present awareness in which all experiences arise and pass, just like a storm arises and passes. You are not the ego. You are the space in which the ego appears. In non-dual understanding, the suffering arises not from life itself, but the identification with the false self, the ego. The ego is not a thing, but a story, a collection of beliefs, roles, and images that consciousness mistakenly claims to be me. These identities are fragile, conditional, and constantly threatened by change because they are not rooted in truth. They are not rooted in the true self. Any belief that begins with I am this ties to self-worth and is part of the false self. Even seemingly positive identities, I am successful, I am spiritual, I am a healer, I am kind, can become prisons when they are not used to define the self. When life no longer supports this image, suffering arises. For this example, someone may love playing tennis for the joy of it and may identify as a champion. The joy becomes conditional. Winning affirms the ego, losing threatens it. What once was a play becomes pressure. The ego hijacks the experience and turns it into a performance. This is why non-attachment and non-identification are central in spiritual teachings. When we act from joy, love, and presence, not the identity, we are completely free, free to be the true self of what already was and always will be. There is no self image to protect, no outcome to control, and life naturally unfolds. The root of suffering, attachment to the story. The human condition is marked by attachment to the personal stories. People believe they are the character in the story, forgetting that they are the awareness in which the story appears. Whether the story is one of success or struggle, it is still a story, and all stories are temporary. To see this is to clearly awaken. Just as an actor is not the role they play, you are not the egoic identity you have assumed or the false self. You are the formless awareness in which all roles arise and dissolve. The ego may wear the mask of the achiever, the controller, or the victim, but none of these is who you truly are. The illusion of external power. Egoic identities give away their power. The achiever gives it to success and possessions. The controller gives it to perfection and predictability. The victim gives it to others waiting to be saved. When these external sources shift, as they always do, the ego panics. It scrambles again to regain control, to rebuild the image, and to find a new source of validation. But true power does not come from the outside. It arises from the recognition of the true self, which is the unchanging awareness that needs nothing to be whole. When you rest in the true self, power is not something you acquire. It is something that you are. It is the silent strength of being, untouched by the gain or loss, praise or blame, youth or age. The end of separation. The false self sees life through the lens of separation. I must compete to survive. I must control to be safe. I must be saved to be whole. These are illusions. In truth, there is no separation. You are not apart from life. You are life. You are not separate from others. You are the consciousness appearing in different forms. To awaken is to become something, it is not to become something new, but to remember what you have always been, whole, free, and already enough, resting in the beingness of your true self. Observing the false self through the lens of awareness. Bringing awareness to the false self begins with a non-judgmental observation, watching the thoughts and emotions arise and pass without identifying with them. This is not about fixing or analyzing, but simply being. Imagine a scientist observing a new species, not to control or label it, but to witness its behavior with curiosity and neutrality. For example, I am late to work, my heart races, a thought arises, my boss will fire me, my chest tightens, breathing becomes shallow, another thought, I can't do anything right, I'm so stupid, no one believes in me, I don't believe in myself. Take a sacred pause. From the space of awareness, what is seen? There is a sequence of events, lateness, psychological response, mental narrative, emotional escalation. The false self, a conditioned identity, reacts with fear, shame, and self-judgment. But the true self, the awareness that sees all, is untouched. It is not it does not label the experience as good or bad. It simply is. The experience is unfolding in front of the true self, and it is the silent witness. This awareness is not separate from you. It is you, your true nature. The one who observes is not a separate scientist, but the unmoving presence behind all experience. Returning to the breath, slowly in through the nose, out through the mouth, rounds the body and quiets the mind, allowing you to rest again in this witnessing presence, allowing you to rest in your true nature, your true self, in effortless being, in the moment without effort. The journey from identification to awareness. For many years, I lived in the confines of a constructed identity, the false self. I believed I was a successful businesswoman climbing the corporate ladder. But beneath that image was anxiety, depression, and a constant sense of inner turmoil. The first step in awakening was observation, not the world, but the self image I had unconsciously built. At first, it was difficult. Thoughts swept me away, emotions overwhelmed me, but with practice, essentially the conscious breathing, I began to see more clearly and dissolve the constructs of the identity that I had created. I saw that this me was constantly agitated, plagued by negative thoughts, and emotionally reactive. As awareness, I began to observe this identity with a clear pane of glass, and I noticed patterns. This person worries about things that really happen. This person reacts defensively when criticized. This person has a negative thought pattern about herself every few moments. I did not judge. I simply observed. If I had a thought, this person is a tormented soul, that would be a judgment. If I had believed it, that would be an attachment. Instead, I remained as the silent witness, and in that space, clarity emerged. The true self was silently being revealed over time as I let go of the identity and each identity that I had created for myself. Returning to stillness. Whenever emotional charge arises, return to your breath. Watch the thoughts, watch the emotions, let them pass like clouds across the sky. Do not label them, do not resist them. If judgment arises, observe that too. The moment you judge, you strengthen the false self, you give your power away to the identity. But when you remain as the observer, you create a space for your true self, pure awareness, pure presence to shine through. This space, this stillness is always there. It is the gap between thoughts and the pause between the breaths and the presence behind the mind. It is not something you create, it is what you are, your true self. Over time, as you observe without reacting, you begin to see the patterns of the false self clearly. You may notice that certain situations, like receiving critical feedback, trigger anxiety or defensiveness. The false self reacts, "How dare they question me?" But the observer sees the pattern, stimulus, reaction, emotion. Then comes the deeper inquiry. What belief is being threatened? What memory is being activated? What identity is trying to protect itself? The false self is the collection of thoughts, memories, and belief, nothing more. It is not who you are, it is a story, and you are the awareness in which the story appears. By simply observing the voice in the head and the emotions that arise, you begin to see what needs to be released. Awareness brings light to unconscious patterns, and in that light, transformation begins, not through effort, but through clarity. When you are aware, you have freedom to choose. You may catch a behavior as it arises or even before it begins. In that moment, you are no longer a prisoner of your past. You are consciousness choosing moment by moment. This is the essence of non-duality. You are not the body. You are not the mind. Emotions, energy, and the illusion of the false self. Another essential aspect of seeing through the false self is understanding the nature of emotions as energy. not personal burdens, but energetic movements arising within consciousness. When the false self generates negative thought patterns, these thoughts often trigger emotional responses. These emotions are not yours in an ultimate sense. They are energetic expressions arising in awareness, shaped by conditioning and memory. According to the principle of energy conservation, energy cannot be created nor destroyed, only transformed. This is also true of emotional energy. When emotions are not fully felt and released in the moment, they are often suppressed or stored in the body as energetic tension. Over time, these unresolved energies can form what we call energetic blockages, dense pockets of unprocessed experience that the false self uses to reinforce its identity. These blockages are not flaws or failures, they are simply unmet experiences, emotions that were too overwhelming to be fully felt at the time. The false self clings to these emotional imprints because they help maintain its narrative. I was hurt, I was abandoned, I am not enough. These stories become the scaffolding of the false identity. When these emotional patterns are triggered repeatedly, they can feel like a storm or even a dragon within, powerful, consuming, and unseemingly uncontrollable. But from the perspective of pure awareness, the true self, they are simply energy in motion, seeking to be seen, felt, and released. The illusion of depletion and the call to the true self. Imagine your vital energy as a jar of light. Each time a reactive emotion arises and it is not met with awareness, it is a bit of that light is dimmed. Not that it's lost, but that it is covered. The more we identified with the false self narrative, the more we feel depleted, disconnected, and disempowered. In extreme cases, this can lead to deep despair, depression, or even suicidal identification. But in the darkest moments, something deeper remains untouched. It is the true self, the silent, ever present awareness that gently whispers, "Enough, there is another way." This whisper is not dramatic, it is not emotional, it is stillness itself. It is a quiet recognition that suffering is not who you are. It is the beginning and the end of identification with the false self. To end, awareness is key. It requires stepping out of the habitual patterns of the mind, the box of insanity, where the same thoughts and emotions loop endlessly. Once awareness dawns, it cannot be undone. You begin to see the false self for what it is, a mask, a facade, a collection of conditioned responses through the mind. And like any mask, it can be gently removed, not through force, but through clarity. Through observation, you begin to see that the false self is not a fixed entity, but a pattern of energy and thought. It has no substance of its own. It is only kept alive by the unconscious identification. As you rest in awareness in your true self, the emotional energy that once felt overwhelming begins to dissolve, not because you fought it, but because you met it fully, without judgment, without resistance. And in this meeting, the energy transforms, the blockages releases, and the light of true consciousness, the true self, returns. In Chapter 2.